Coming up in today's podcast.
And the irony in all this is I've heard recently from an insider within the Brethren, quoting somebody very high up in the Brethren, who said that their charities, including the meeting rooms, One School Global, and all the charities, have roughly $20 billion of assets. So that's properties and cash. Yeah. And then, so when you see that the one number that does come out, it's tiny in comparison to their overall value of worth. I'm pretty sure that if nobody donated $1 to one number, that they would survive quite easily for 2 or 3 years.
But now imagine someone who's extremely rich stealing from a charity. Wow, that's even worse. I mean, imagine stealing from a charity. So you're actually stealing from the poorest people. You're stealing from people who desperately need help. It's like stealing much lower than that, can you? Oh, but yes, you can. What if the charity and what if the people who are doing the stealing are actually leaders of a Christian church whose byline, whose slogan is care and compassion for all? I mean, I kind of summed it up as the overall message you get here is please give very generously to our amazing vision welfare system, but please do not expect it to bail you out if you have an actual need, because that's down to your relatives and down to the local brethren.
Welcome to the Get a Life podcast. Explore survivor stories. Uncover the hidden truths. Join our X-Cult conversations. You matter, and so does your story. Hi everyone, welcome back to Get a Life podcast. I am Cheryl Hope, and today with me is Richard Marsh and Lane Admiral. All three of us are ex-members of the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church, formerly known as Exclusive Brethren. We also have Damian Hastie joining us as well. Damian has spent many years uncovering the financial side of the Plymouth Brethren Christian cult, and you can view his work on BrethrenExposed.com. Today we're pulling back the curtain on Strive 26. The Plymouth Brethren Christian Church's pressure cooker disguised as a seminar. You're about to hear the language of a cult, trying to brand itself as a business empire, while also pretending to be a church. We're talking financial control, indoctrination of children, guilt-based obedience, and leaders who actually congratulate themselves for not being a cult while behaving exactly like one. This is a system that drains people dry, financially, mentally, emotionally, and then has the nerve to call it humility and gratitude. If anyone has ever wondered how a group keeps thousands of people silent, scared, obedient, and too exhausted to fight back, Strive 26 is your blueprint. So one of the first things that we want to talk about is an article that was put out by Michael Batchelard. It's called Plymouth Brethren Tightens Its Grip on Members but Rejects Cult Claims. And so this is everything that we're going to talk about in our podcast today. So if you haven't read this, definitely read this. It's also got the audio from Strive 26 on it. And the link will be below in the description if you don't have access to it. I want to dive right into this. There's so much to unpack here. Richard, can you explain to the viewers and listeners what Strive 26 really is?
Sure. So that the Strive events happen at the end of each year, and they're kind of a pep talk to prepare the Brethren members for the upcoming year. So this is Strive 26, which is basically telling the Brethren how they're expected to behave in 2026. And the main theme of these always, the underlying theme and purpose of these Strive events is to raise money for the next year. And the way they do this is that they give a large volume of business sounding waffle and inspiring quotes and so-called success stories, but it's all geared towards loosening the purse strings and trying to collect an obscenely large sum of money from the entire Brethren community of 56,000 people worldwide. The primary use for the money is to fund their one school global schooling system for the children, but they also collect a very large excess over the schooling costs for various very ill-defined purposes, such as a so-called endowment fund and something called vision welfare, all of which consumes vast sums of money but seems to have no practical accountability. The money simply disappears into the system or accumulates in numerous obscure trusts around the globe. The only thing you can observe is that the leading members of the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church get very conspicuously wealthier year on year. So it's basically a massive shakedown disguised as an inspirational seminar. And what follows on the Strive presentation is that every member globally is sent an email in which they have to fill in how much money they're going to donate to their so-called ecosystem for the year 2026.
We obtained a few audios of this Strive 26, and we have a transcript that we're going to share, and we are going to walk you through it to some of the more important focus that we want to expose here.
Okay, so we're going to go through the Strive 26 transcript more or less in chronological order. It's arranged as a series of panels of different speakers who are speaking on different subjects. And the first panel is Dean Hales, Charles Hales, that's two of Bruce Hales' sons, Logan Curry, Jeremy Joyce, Roddy Cox, and Caleb Hall, where Caleb Hall is the CEO of Universal Business Team, I believe. So one of the first things they're talking about is what's called GAP, G-A-P, and this is actually the first time they've really spoken out publicly about it, where GAP is the kind of committee that is actually controls the whole PBCC ecosystem on a daily basis. Damian, I think you had some comments on GAP.
Yeah, I think obviously the global advisory panel is made up of senior members of the Plymouth Brethren. There has been some changes. There was an actual company set up in Australia, and it's still there, that has directors, of which the people that are in the panel, Jeremy Joyce and Caleb Hall, are both current directors of GAP. Dean Hales is a former director. Logan Curry is a former director. So basically, the Global Advisory Panel is the senior leadership of the Brethren that controls basically all the spend, all the infrastructure, what needs to be raised. And as you said, Richard, it's very much the top of the ecosystem. And when you actually look at Strive, what they do basically is run through each major part of the ecosystem. So they'll talk about the Global Advisory Panel, which, as you say, is the first time they've done that. But then they'll also then go through and look at sort of a report on each of the different areas of the ecosystem. So they'll start off with Universal Business Team. They'll then go through and talk about Vision, One School Global, Orbit, and the church itself. So each one, as you say, has different panels, but the Global Advisory Panel is what you'll see in this, and I'll probably come back to it later, is it's a very corporate structure in how they operate. And very much to me, the Global Advisory Panel, or GAP, or GAP, whatever you want to call it, is actually the board of directors of the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church, the church that says it has no hierarchy. In reality, this is the hierarchy. You've got Bruce Hales as the chairman, then you've got the board of directors, which is made up of the global advisory panel. And underneath that, you've got all the different departments. So you've got UBT, which is led by Caleb Hall. You've got One School Global that would appear to be based on this, led by, if I remember correctly, Stephen Fuchs. So you can see each department and each panel is made up of the leader of that department. And in reality, this is a business, basically. This isn't a church.
Yeah, absolutely. The presentation as a whole, the Strive 26 as a whole, has an enormous amount of very boring waffle in it. Promotional waffle, business talk. And so we're just going to run through and pick out some of the most important lines and sections. Like 95% of it is padding. There's very little substantial content. So just running through the first couple of pages, I'm just going to pick out a few lines just in the order they come in, and then we can talk about some of those. One of the things that comes up very early on the first page is Charles Hales saying, but if we look at all the household situations that we come across, or that comes across Father's desk around the world, a lot of families are under a lot of financial pressure. So it starts off with this admission that, all is not well in the amongst PBCC members as a whole. And then he goes on to say, or Dean Hales then jumps in to say, it's a theme that really underpins this event is that it not only applies to the ecosystem at large, but to every individual household and circumstance that we face. Are we budgeting wisely? And are we using those funds wisely? And the reason I point up that quote is that as we go through the podcast, you can judge for yourself whether the PBCC management level is using the funds wisely.
Richard, I found that super interesting too. He said in there, I think, that he spoke to his father, right? And that,
yes.
And the message back from Bruce Hales was, are we using this hard-earned donations wisely?
Yes.
So he's admitting that they're hard-earned, and he's really, I mean, he's probably asking himself that, really, and the answer is no, right? And I also loved how they always talk about, they slip in global community all the time, right? Global community. And I just want to remind the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church leaders like Logan there, when they're talking and they speak of the global community actually equals 8.5 billion people. The PBCC is 50,000. So for instance, a comparison, a teaspoon holds about 50,000 grains of sand compared to a dump truck holds about 8.5 billion.
That's a good imagery.
Global community. Like they just, come on, guys.
So just pulling out one or two more quotes just to set the scene from the very beginning, from the first panel, the introduction to Strive 26. We've got Logan Curry talking about the one number. And this is a consistent feature of these Strive seminars, that they all lead up to producing this one number, which you should really capitalize. It's kind of a title. And the one number is how much money they are saying they need to finance the ecosystem through the upcoming year. So Logan Curry is talking about the one number, and he describes it as, that's what keeps the lights on. So that's our number one priority for funding the ecosystem, is keeping the lights on. And again, this is a consistent theme, is that they try to create a sense of urgency, as if they don't collect this whole sum of money, then the lights are going to go out and the whole system is going to close down.
Every Strive seminar has that theme to it. There's urgency of making sure they have enough money to educate the children. It always comes back down to, and again, Logan Curry says that we can't stop educating our children. And you'll see throughout this transcript how many times it comes back to using the children to get the money. No matter what it is, it ends up they end up putting that sentence into things.
Yeah, and it creates this impression of a cliff edge that unless they have this money right now, the whole thing's going to collapse and the whole thing's going to shut down, as if they have zero reserves, as if they're down to their last dime.
There's a couple of other points there as well, is just to really emphasize the urgency that they build is at the end of Strive, they send out, they basically say that a pledging form will be emailed out to all members, and they need to get their pledges back in by the Friday. So they're basically only giving them 4 days. It's all that urgency and time pressure that they build into it. And the irony in all this is, I've heard recently from an insider within the Brethren, quoting somebody very high up in the Brethren, who said that their charities, including the meeting rooms, One School Global, and all the charities, have roughly $20 billion of assets. So that's properties and cash. And then, so when you see that the one number that does come out, it's tiny in comparison to their overall value of worth. I'm pretty sure that if nobody donated $1 to this one number, that they would survive quite easily for 2 or 3 years.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Or God forbid they'd have to close their schools and their children would have to go to normal schools like everybody else and learn science.
So another quote from this first page, the relevance of which will become obvious as we go through is, and again Logan Curry saying, the other role that GAP plays is around providing an area where we can provide accountability and transparency to each other. And they have a lot to say in this Strive 26 about accountability and transparency. And again, as we go through, you can judge for yourself how much accountability and transparency there really is in there.
Really, what they're trying to say is they want accountability and transparency from the members' businesses.
Yes.
Basically, we want to see your accounting books. We want to see how much money you're making, and then we'll tell you how much you should donate to us so that you can, barely skim by or go bankrupt,
Yes. Yes, exactly. It's not that they want to have transparency and accountability to the members. They want transparency and accountability from the members.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they also, an interesting comment in here is, again, in relation to GAP, is one other area we have also brought about a level of accountability is by including extra external accountants, external auditors, and external legal people. Well, I mean, that's very fine. I'm sure that's an improvement on what they're doing already. But that doesn't improve the accountability for the people who are actually putting the money into the system. So, and finally, again, at the end of this statement, Logan Curry again, they say, GAP 2.0 has been a step forward in the ecosystem, and I guess we just want to bring confidence to everyone that there is a level of accountability and a rigor as we go through this journey. Then they go on to speak about the ATO, the Australian Tax Authority audit, as they call it. We know it was really a raid rather than an audit. Caleb Hall, who's I think the CEO of UBT, Universal Business Team, says this.
Thanks, Logan. As you all know, UBT has been through an ATO audit over the past 18 months. Although it was a distraction across the business, to date we've made significant progress with the ATO and continue to work with them. They've commented that they have a better understanding of who we are and what we do. And there's been a movement forward for an ongoing transparency and cooperation. We also want to acknowledge that we've had some challenges in areas that we can improve on, and we appreciate the feedback from the community. As a result of the ATO audit, and extensive insight survey from you as clients, UBT and the Global Board have taken this opportunity to restructure and rebuild UBT 2.0.
So this is a very significant admission because Bruce Hales made some remarks in a fellowship meeting a couple of months back in which he stated that the ATO had given up on their investigation. They'd given them a clean bill of health and everything in the garden was rosy now. So now we have this admission that in fact the ATO investigation is ongoing, and we found out just yesterday that the fact is that the ATO have completed their audit of just 2 areas of the Brethren ecosystem, and they have ongoing investigations into the remainder of the ecosystem. So the attempt by Bruce to gaslight everyone into thinking all the troubles were over was just a very typical piece of Hales' spin and dishonesty. The ATO investigation is an extremely serious, existential crisis, in fact, for the PBCC ecosystem, and it's still ongoing.
Yeah, and I think I would just say I'm glad that this was said in the Strive meetings, because we get so many of the insider trolls coming at us all the time in the comments on YouTube, in our comments on social media, saying that, no, the ATO raid is over. It's over. You guys are lying. And here it is, again, a complete admission that this is still ongoing, which we knew that it's still ongoing.
Logan, I think he said earlier too, he said that the ATOs had made them stronger and more resilient. Well, then you should welcome them.
Yeah.
Okay, so since we started recording this podcast, this article went out, and it's super important that we walk you through it and read what it says and give our own impression and an assumption on what this could mean. So this was by the Daily Telegraph, and James Willis was the journalist. So James is the one that did all of the PR campaign for the Brethren. And this one is titled Plymouth Brethren Christian Church Linked Business Network, UBT repays millions to ATO. The umbrella company linked to the secretive Plymouth Brethren Christian Church has made a payment of several $1 million after a major raid by the ATO last year. The business network linked to the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church has agreed to make a payment of several $1 million to the Australian Tax Office, ATO. The significant voluntary disclosure follows a major raid last year on the offices of the Universal Business Team and some of the Brethren's charities and its global school headquarters. Boasting annual revenue of $200 million in Australia, UBT is the umbrella company for thousands of Brethren-owned businesses, offering them advice, coaching, and training programs. It also offers a web filtering software which Brethren Church members use on their devices. UBT has previously told this masthead all of its profits were invested into education, charities, and other not-for-profit organizations. The Daily Telegraph has seen recent correspondence from the ATO where it confirms it would accept a voluntary disclosure from UBT relating to income and fringe benefits tax issues between the 2021 and 2024 financial years. In general terms, the ATO will apply a reduction in penalties and interest charges if a company offers to make a voluntary disclosure. When approached for comment, a spokeswoman for UBT told this masthead a payment of several $1 million has been made to the ATO as part of a voluntary disclosure made by the UBT to close the FBT and salary splitting matters off. The raids in March last year targeted UBT's head office at the precinct in Sydney Olympic Park. Such action by the ATO occurs in exceptional circumstances. The tax unit overseeing these inquiries, which are now 20 months old, is known as the Wealth Program, which is typically focused on complex and opaque business structures. Stationed inside the precinct office address where UBT operates are no fewer than 8 registered charities, each with current Brethren Church members on their boards. Financial documents reveal that 8 organizations had combined net assets totaling $240 million at the end of the 2024 financial year. The Brethren's One School Global, which has a Sydney campus at Oatlands, received $76 million worth of donations in the past 2 years. The Brethren have also commenced plans for a new $100 million church at Rydalmere. UBT told this masthead, "We thank the ATO for its fairness throughout this process and acknowledge the important work it does to ensure a robust and healthy taxation system. We are working in a similarly transparent and cooperative way with the ATO on 2 other matters that are ongoing," the spokeswoman said. The ATO declined to comment due to their obligations under taxpayer confidentiality laws. The Telegraph recently featured an investigation into the Brethren. The church boasts just 16,000 Australian members and holds strict Christian beliefs, including fellowship where they do not eat or drink with members of the wider community. So this was quite the bomb that was dropped yesterday.
This is so confusing, though, Cheryl, because we just went over which Hales boy was it that was saying that, was it Dean Hales that said that really this was a great investigation and they kind of welcomed it and they've learned so much from it. So, you know, when it says repays millions to ATO, they must have wanted to do that, correct? Right? This must have been a welcoming, because they said it was a great investigation, that it basically, the Brethren welcomed it.
Well, yes. I mean, if they like doing these things, we could find other places where they could hand over a few million, but could be put to good use, couldn't we?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
but
like the Olive Leaf Network.
But yeah, jokes aside, this is wow, right? And you could see that the Telegraph itself stuck to facts, right? And just This is exactly what happened. You know, do we know what the outcome's going to be? Not exactly, but we're starting to see it, right? All of a sudden UBT goes, wow, we want to pay back these millions to settle just one portion of the discrepancies, let's call them, right?
Well, yeah.
And I noticed that it was around salaries too. Oh, yes. Interesting. Isn't that nice when charities all of a sudden have to pay back millions regarding salaries of their charity workers, right? Because that's what a charity should be focused on and worrying about, is paying back millions in money that has to do with the charity's salaries.
That's very, very good point, Lane, because I mean, not only are all these charities headquartered at the precinct, but this is fundamentally UBT, which is accused in this case. And UBT is supposed to be a non-profit. All the profits from UBT are supposed to go to the charities. So when the Brethren buy their services and like ludicrously overpriced phone plans and phones and so on from UBT, it's expected that there's no actual profit going to the people who run UBT. And on paper, I'm guessing in their, the accounts that they would present if you challenge them, that would appear to be the case. But what this very strongly suggests is that the people who run the UBT, like the Hales boys and, those big important members of the GAP, members of GAP, they're siphoning money from this charitable enterprise by exorbitant wages. And there's a reference in here to wage splitting. And what that refers to is where a husband and a wife both draw a wage so as to keep below certain tax limits. And of course, that's fine if the husband and the wife do genuinely both work in the organization. But what tends to happen, of course, in the Brethren is that, the husband is given 100,000 a year because he actually works there, and the wife is given 100,000 a year, even though she doesn't do there, and they'll give her some sort of a nominal position. Of course, it's simply tax evasion because it keeps them both below a certain tax threshold. So that's what the wage splitting is. And then FSB. Sorry, go on, Lane.
I just want to clarify that in my mind. So what you're saying is, let's say I'm a Brethren member with a wife and I occasionally work at UBT or one of their charities.
Yeah.
And my wife volunteers by handing out the hamburgers, then they're basically wage splitting and saying, okay, here's 50 grand that goes to Lane and here's 50 grand that goes to his wife, even though she's volunteering. Is that how they're kind of splitting the wages, or
Yeah,
am I
that
getting
that
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 wrong?
kind of thing, or maybe the wife doesn't actually do anything there at all. She's just nominally on the payroll without actually doing anything. But it keeps their income below a certain tax threshold. I mean, if you're
Yeah.
on minimum wage, you might be paying 20% tax. If you're on a high tax level, you might be paying 60%. But if you can
And
split it between two family members, you're saving a huge amount of tax.
and that just riles me up in a way, because I'm on the board of directors for a nonprofit, and the only thing that we pay for, right, with our volunteers is expenses. Can we
Yes.
pay for some of your food, your hotel
Yeah.
when you're traveling,
Yeah.
some flights, you know what I mean, to get someone somewhere. The fact that you would be paying like a salary. Now, I get it. Charities, you need workers, right, to do things. And there are some times you have to pay an employee, obviously.
Yeah.
But the fact that they're paying back millions means that this wasn't an overpayment of one or two employees, you know?
No, no. This is systematic, massive systematic extraction of cash. I mean, there are two issues here. One is they're cheating the tax system, where they're cheating basically the Australian taxpayer. But I mean, as far as the more immediate concern for current Brethren members is, this is your money. This is your money that these people have been stealing. This is money that you voluntarily donated for good causes, where you've supported the initiatives. Remember, you've got to support the initiatives, and it's all for the care and compassion and the preservation of the oncoming generation. And these losers right at the top of your church have been siphoning this money off into their own pockets. So the other thing that's mentioned here is FBT, which is fringe benefit tax. A fringe benefit tax is where you get something instead of actual payment. So, like, typically where you get a company car or other kinds of business benefits that are not paid as a salary. And of course, you have to pay tax on whatever the value of those benefits are. And it looks like
Okay.
they've also been, and again, this is probably almost certainly a way of keeping employees and board members' salaries below certain tax thresholds, instead of paying them, the full salary as cash or as a payment, which can be seen by the tax system because it passes through bank accounts. They've been buying things like luxury vehicles, luxury goods, giving those to their top employees, millions of dollars worth of luxury goods to top employees, because it's being physical goods, it doesn't pass through the employee's account. And this is another tax evasion scheme. Imagine what those luxury goods and so on can be that would add up to several $1 million in value. But again, this is a it's a banal kind of tax evasion that commonly happens. But this is being done not by a struggling mom and pop business. This is being done by the financial wing, the financial advisory board of the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church, to benefit the leadership of the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church at the expense of the Australian taxpayer and at the expense of the regular hard-working members.
And it's
I
just
want
so
to
low to do it through charities. You know what I mean? Like, it's just a charity and a nonprofit is set up to help people. That's its entire
yeah.
goal, is to help others. And when people give and donate their hard-earned money to organizations, they're doing it because they're trying to be altruistic, because they want to help people, right? And they
Yeah.
expect that money to go and help those in need. And the fact that the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church is just like I don't even know the word I'm looking for, but just destroying that whole idea behind a charity and a nonprofit to funnel millions of dollars to the already rich Plymouth Brethren. It's just disgusting. It's
It's
disgusting.
absolutely staggering.
But it does show where their true heart is at in this whole situation. I want to remind the listeners and viewers of what they said on a podcast. Here's a clip of that. And this is Charles, the whole four Hales boys discussing how they don't avoid tax, and it's laughable that anybody would suggest that.
So have businesses or our charitable organisations been specifically set up to dodge tax, Gareth?
No, not at all. No, we absolutely believe in paying tax. That's what makes Australia great. It's what makes any country great, because it really funds essential services like health and education and transport and roads, bridges, gas, water, the list goes on. So any forward-thinking, prosperous country relies on taxpayers' money. My father was actually a company auditor and a tax accountant, so from day one he was always adamant that we pay a tax. And one little story comes to mind. He said he got a call from his father, John Hales, about 50 years ago, and he said, "I want you to write 3 things down, Bruce." And one was total integrity with the tax office. The second thing was to do the best by your clients. And the third thing was, if you make a little bit of money on the way, that's by the way. But I thought that was 3 good programs to go by. But yeah, we 1,000% believe in paying tax.
Yeah, there's been a myth for you, Dean. There's been a myth for decades that we don't pay tax, and it's honestly laughable.
Yeah, I was just going to say we've had a lot of wider community employees join our business that have seen the narrative and the headlines around avoiding tax, and it's far from the truth. And just to echo what Gareth said, I think it's been, since we all entered into business, a cardinal, non-negotiable principle that we've been brought up on, that you pay your tax and you pay your tax on time.
A lot of our clients, Lloyd, are Fortune 500 companies, and they like to look at their actual financials. So we can't have anything dodgy going on dealing with those sorts of companies, yeah.
I mean, one thing I want to just add in here, if you're going to kind of make a scale of shittiness, excuse the language, I mean, you can imagine someone who's very hard up stealing from a shop to feed their children, okay? I mean, that's wrong, that's immoral, but you'd have some sympathy for that. But now imagine someone who's extremely rich stealing from a shop for their benefit. Well, that's really bad. That's really disgusting. No one would condone that. But now imagine someone who's extremely rich stealing from a charity. Wow, that's even worse. I mean, imagine stealing from a charity. So you're actually stealing from the poorest people. You're stealing from people who desperately need help.
It's
You
like
can't
stealing
get much lower than that, can you? Oh, but
No.
yes, you can. What if the charity and what if the people who are doing the stealing are actually leaders of a Christian church whose byline, whose slogan is care and compassion for all? That really is the lowest of the low. And that's exactly, behind these kind of rather dry and technical headlines, that's what's happening here.
Yeah. I mean, it is good that something is finally coming out of this, because I know that they were getting impatient in there. And then we had the trolls on top of it. It is like we all knew that something was going to come of this. And this is just the beginning of this. This is not finished by any means. This is just the beginning. And then for them, like, Richard, can you explain what it means when someone voluntary, gives them this disclosure, how that can alleviate some of their other charges up against them?
Yeah, so it's very much similar to the system that happens in the, if someone's been caught in some crime, if someone comes to court and they plead guilty, they will generally get a reduction in whatever sentence or penalty might be applied to them, because basically they're saving the court from going through all the expense and hassle of having a long trial. So if people are caught in some crime and there's absolutely no way they can wriggle out of it, it's often wise to plead guilty and get a lighter sentence. And so what they call voluntary disclosure here, as far as I understand, is pretty much that basically they have evaded by deceptive means and withholding information and all these other dirty tricks we've talked about. They've evaded several $1 million of tax per year. So the first step in terms of this voluntary disclosure process is that they pay the tax that they that they have stolen, that they've withheld. And then the next stage will be equivalent to the sentencing stage in a court case, which is where the ATO will say, okay, well, there's a penalty for this kind of crime, and that'll probably be, I mean, it may not be limited to a financial penalty, but it will at least partially be a financial penalty. So then they will have to pay a further very large sum of money, which is their penalty for trying this stupid trick. And then they may have to pay interest for having withheld this tax from the ATO for several years. So this is just like the very first stage. It's basically, yes, Your Honor, you caught us red-handed. There's nothing we can say.
Yeah.
Look, here's the goods we stole from the store. I'm going to give it back to the store owner. And then the judge is going to go on and say, okay, well, we're going to give you 5 years for theft and so on.
Yeah. Now, what do you guys want to bet that the Strive 26 one number is going to grow by about 240 million in how much they request?
But I do think, this is an assumption we can make, that the reason why it was on such short notice of the having all the funds come in and the pledge forms being filled out by 4 days later was to do with stuff. This all lined up perfectly to show exactly what the funds are going to be used for.
Yeah, if this had come out first before Strive 26, that would have been devastating, because who in their right mind is going to give money to a firm currently being prosecuted for massive theft of money from a charity?
And it's so true, because even if you're just a Joe Blow Plymouth Brethren member, you're going to be about to fill out the form after reading an article that says they're paying back 240 billion. Your money is literally just going to pay off a debt that the charity owes now. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like you're just wasting your money. It's not going to help anybody. It's not going to help anyone.
It's like you enroll your kids in a daycare, and the week after you've signed your enrollment form, you find that the owner of the daycare is in court for being a pedophile, right?
Yeah.
I just want to point out that they are finally using a spokeswoman here instead of a spokesman. So, yay. We're moving in the right direction, people.
So here Roddy Cox says, that's good, Caleb. So the revised focus of UBT is to achieve 100% business and household engagement through products and services that align to the community and accelerate prosperity for all. So basically what they're trying to sell there is that not everybody has signed up, right? Not all businesses have signed up to UBT and given over their accounting and being transparent with how much money they make and everything. And so this is a typical move by, a pyramid and a scam, right? We don't have everybody involved yet. Everybody's got to be involved, right? Well, if it was an amazing thing that was just going smoothly, then you wouldn't need everybody. You don't need 100% participation, but that's what they're looking for. And I just found that very interesting.
Yes, it's very, very culty, the 100%, the 100%. And the other thing that amused me about that is they're transitioning Campus & Co.
to
an online service, providing products our households may struggle to find elsewhere. Now, if you're going into online commerce, what products exactly are they going to struggle to find elsewhere that isn't already on Amazon or eBay or one of these Chinese sites? Has anyone got any suggestions as to what unique products the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church might struggle to find and have to go to Campus & Co. online?
I'm guessing they're going to have somebody bless the products.
Well,
the new
could
thing.
be.
Maybe Bruce will sign them, put a signature on them or something, or touch them virtually, and they'll sell them that way.
Well, they used, it's biblical. They used to take napkins from the bodies of the apostles and use them to heal people. So, maybe you can get one of Bruce's used tissues or something to heal your COVID with.
You can get
I wouldn't put it past him.
A Bruce Hale signed Get a Life t-shirt.
Yeah.
Yes. Talk about coming together, hey?
I know. I mean, the only product I thought of that they might find a use for that's probably not on the market would be child-sized breathalyzers for use at one school global.
Yeah, very true. Can you imagine the teachers having those and really proving that these kids are drinking at school? Yeah.
So going on down this, first panel, a very significant comment where Roddy Cox admits that they've done this global business survey. Again, not at all intrusive. Every business globally has to do the business vision survey and submit all their accounts. And the result is that the revenue, globally, Brethren's business revenue has flatlined. So, and then they also admit that the profits are also down in 2025 compared to last year. And as you go on, they have a lot to say about trying to excuse why this has happened. And basically the theme is that we're in an economic recession. In fact, they compare conditions in New Zealand to the great financial crisis. And they're kind of making out that, well, everything's really fine. And the only reason that the profits are down and that the business growth has flatlined is because there's a global recession. So I did a very small amount of research as to the economic growth for the main countries where the Brethren are for 2024 and 2025. So I looked at Australia, New Zealand, UK, United States, Canada, and the European Union. And for both years, 2024 and 2025, economic growth is between 1% at the lowest and 2.2% at the highest, mostly around the 2% mark for all those countries. So the reality is that the global economy, or the economy in the countries where the Brethren are operating, is growing 2024 and 2025, but the Brethren's share of that economy has decreased. And it's not because of overall economic conditions. It's because there's something happening in the Brethren's businesses that's depressing their growth and making them less competitive as compared to last year.
Still turning over 50. They've still got sales revenue of 53 billion between them all. That's
yes,
an incredible number. An incredible number. There's 56,000 members, and their businesses are selling goods and services to the total of $53 billion. That's remarkable.
Mm. Oh, there's no question that they're enormously successful in a financial sense overall, but right up until this point, there's been a substantial year-on-year increase, and suddenly they have all this bad news. They have this ATO raid. They have the massive negative publicity, and suddenly, for the first time, their businesses have stopped growing. And I would have a question as to whether, in fact, it's the massive negative publicity that may have impacted their sales. Because I think a lot of people, and we hear this from outsiders, they are quietly boycotting these Brethren businesses, partly because of the scandals associated with the businesses themselves, and partly because of the bad reputation of the PBCC as a whole. And I mean, I really think this latest PR disaster of election interference is going to impact the Brethren's financial success in Australia for a significant period of time.
I did some research into that, and in Australia, businesses that have revenues of over $100 million each year have to report that. It's in the transparency stuff with the Australian government, and I was shocked at the fact that I could only find 5 businesses in Australia that were on that report for 2024. And within them 5, one of those businesses has since been sold. So you compare that to, i.e., the UK or Europe or the US. In the UK, I would say there's probably 20, 25, maybe even 30 companies turning with sales revenue of $100 million plus. So it would seem to me that the negativity in Australia, particularly around both the ATO raid last year and the electoral stuff in 2025, it's definitely having an impact. It will do. People are wary.
I mean, that's actually a huge difference. Like, because, you know, when I was inside the church, Australia was always regarded as this kind of paragon of productivity and profitability, and the brethren in the rest of the world were way behind and scrambling just to cling on to the coattails of the great Australian economic machine under the divine wisdom of the Hales family. And what you're saying now is that in the UK, there's actually far more prosperous businesses than there are in Australia, which is that, I mean, and that's a real dent in the pride of the Hales family, because Australia leads the world, admittedly from the bottom, but they lead the world. So that's a very significant figure. Thank you, Damian, for your research that uncovers these very interesting bits of information. So there's another couple of points I highlighted again in this section, and of course they're trying to spin all this bad news as some kind of a positive, and they go on from their panel into having some testimonials from UBT customers about how wonderful UBT is, which are, you know, very bland and predictable, and they're basically on the lines of, our business was in dire circumstances and we called in the UBT and they turned it all around, and now we're making enormous profits, and then we had more problems and then we called them in again and then they made it even better. It's exciting stuff. It gives you a lot of confidence in them. But a couple of quotes I just want to pull out again that'll become relevant as we go on. So yeah, this is just part of their little puff for the UBT, and they're saying, so this is Logan Curry saying, and it just sort of really hit me, just saying that really the collective wisdom of our consultants and the system that we have that care through, that there's something that's amazing and help is available. And a little later on, again, talking about, this is Dean Hales now talking about UBT, there's an incredible depth of talent and expertise. Now, my question is this: if you have this so amazing system of wise consultants with an incredible depth of talent and expertise, how did you manage to screw up so incredibly badly in the last year? I mean, these people who are bragging about their depth of wisdom, talent, and expertise, and offering to share crumbs from the master's table at enormous cost to struggling businesses, these are the same people that screwed up so badly in their own business, UBT, that they got raided by the Australian Tax Office. And when you look at UBT as it used to be, UBT 1.0, as we now have to call it, the crown jewels of UBT was UBT Accountants, UBTA, which must have been the world's premier accounting firm back in the day, because it was powered by the accounting wisdom of Bruce D. Hales, who, as we all know, is the Einstein of the accounting world. And he gets his financial wisdom directly from Jesus Christ, which gives him a definite edge over the other accounting companies on the planet. Now, this amazing accounting business, UBTA, after the ATO raids, very hastily closed down, shut its doors, and sent its customers elsewhere. And then a few months later, UBTA New Zealand very, very quietly and subtly does exactly the same thing. So my question to the current members of the PBCC, and particularly the business owners, is if these people presenting this panel can't even run their own business, why would you let them run yours?
Mm-hmm.
They always want more from the businesses, right? Inside the PBCC. Like they even say they want better reporting for how much money the businesses are making. And like, if I could just do a little story here that I think will have a good point. So I was recently in Jamaica doing some humanitarian work, and I sat down with a massive nonprofit organization. It's $1 billion organization. I sat down with one of the executives, and they were giving us some advice on our little NGO and the humanitarian work we want to do. And he was explaining government grants. And he's like, we actually never take government grants. We take private donations. And we were like, well, why? Why do you never take government grants? He's like, because of the stipulations and the rules that are hidden inside these contracts. He's like, imagine that you're in a disaster zone and you want to purchase some generators to help run some pumps. But in the contract from the government grant, it says that you have to get 3 different quotes before you can purchase anything, you know, and now you're in a disaster zone trying to get quotes for generators. You don't have time for that. So that made sense, right? And I started thinking about what UBT and everything is trying to do. And the message that I'm trying to get across is to the small business owners inside the PBCC. What they're trying to do is similar in this sense. Come on, we're going to give you help. And what small business owner doesn't want help from bigger organizations, right? They want accounting help. You want the marketing help. You want the sales help, any kind of help to get your business going. That's your baby. But it comes at such a cost, right? They are locking you in. They're going to take part of your company. They're going to take ownership. They're going to see your sales and all the money that you make, how much you pay employees, and then they're going to try and tell you what to do, right? They're going to tell you, oh no, you can pay this employee less because they're not Brethren member. You can do this, you can do that. Oh, you make this much in revenue? No, you can donate more, right? So you're selling yourself to this organization, right? So I just wanted to kind of show that comparison to why sometimes it's not good to accept help in a way.
No such thing as a free lunch.
Exactly.
Unless you go to the RRT burger stall. Yeah. So again, running down this section, there's just this barrage of business seminar speak, and like it's incredibly repetitive, and it's full of these little, absolutely stacked full of little business buzzwords and acronyms. But this one really hit me. This is Jeremy Joyce, and he says, "Yeah, I think obviously, as we're just hearing you talk about it, it gives you the whole mindset that winners win. So once you start winning and getting into the winning mindset, then it's amazing the momentum and discretionary effort that comes about." So this is really helpful advice that, believe it or not, winners win. And it's kind of striking that the people who are promoting this winners win mindset are the people who have just massively screwed up the whole PBCC ecosystem by the disastrous Australian 2025 election campaign. So on top of the ATO raids, which were a huge PR disaster and led to UBT closing down its accounting divisions, and as they admit, incurring enormous costs in trying to clean up the ongoing mess, they then compound it. They make it 1,000 times worse by a completely misguided and foolish attempt to change the course of a democratic election in Australia, which of course was, I mean, not only did it obviously and predictably fail to change the course of the election, but it's brought massive and ongoing investigations and shame and disgrace down on the head of the whole PBCC. And these people who orchestrated this and arranged this, they're talking about winners win. So my question to Jeremy Joyce and his little pals on the panel is, isn't this a good example of losers losing rather than winners winning?
Like, they obviously don't know Charlie Sheen. Like, winning, and he was on meth at that point. But, you know, it's funny because, Bruce Hales has built this image of, fake security and a fake threat to him,
Yes.
for so many years, needing counter snipers when he goes to Toronto, like as if. And yet now he's creating his own threat because he's becoming so hated, right? Eventually people in Australia will dislike him, and maybe they will throw eggs at his car or something if they knew it was him, and it's really his own doing because of trying to do things like getting involved in elections.
Yeah, I mean, if I was him, I would definitely have a car with egg-proof windows. I mean, I think bulletproof windows is going a bit far, but
Yes.
I think there is a credible threat to Bruce of low-flying eggs and possibly custard pies.
Yeah.
I've got a bit that I want to cover. What Dean Hales says. Dean Hales relates a story of where he was sat with his dad saying to him, "You've got an overhead structure to support a $20 million business."
Mm-hmm.
But the last 6 months, you've been averaging a run rate of 10 million. So basically, they had to aggressively, he goes on to say, so we had to aggressively cut the overheads. And it's ultimately what saved the business. So don't be emotional when you need to cut the concrete. We don't want to obviously leave employees on the street without a job, but we've got a brilliant mechanism through HR 100 and like-minded business owners that can work together so that if community staff do need to be redeployed into another business that's experiencing growth and prosperity, then UBT will work collectively and collaboratively to make sure that's the best outcome for every business. So what I read in that was, actually, if a business is struggling and it needs to make redundancies, they will move their community employees, their Brethren community employees, into more successful Brethren companies.
Yes.
But what about all the people that aren't Brethren community members?
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
So I've seen a lot on Facebook in the last probably 6 months around non-community members that are employed by Brethren companies being made redundant. HR 100 doesn't support non-community members. So as a business, what that says to me when Dean Hales talks about it, and Charles talks about it as well in the very next, in his reply to Dean, he talks almost as if he's bragging about his business had hit $100 million. And his father had said to him, "How many staff have you got?" And he said 160. And his father, Bruce Hales, church leader, reminded him, "Well, you said that you'd only need 100 staff to do 100 million." So he cut 58 of his staff, and he was quite adamant that that was the best thing to do after the company had made profits.
Yeah.
I'd be really interested to know out of that 58, how many were not Brethren?
Probably all of
Out
them.
of that 58 that were Brethren, were they just moved to another business? So what I saw in this was both Dean and Charles, when they're not only are they talking about running your business properly, which I don't disagree with, but in reality, they would always cut non-Brethren employees first. And
that's part of their
anybody
compassion.
considering working for a Brethren company,
Yeah.
why would you? Because you're going to be
disposable.
first out the door.
Exactly. This is what I really want to stress here, is that we've had an influx of people reaching out to us, being sacked at their job with no reasoning, right? No reason whatsoever. These people have families. These people have small children. They rely on these jobs. They're promised so much when they start, and then before you know it, they're just gone. And I want to point out what Charles Hales is talking about here is that he says, just thinking back to 2017, when I walked into Father's office, and he always brought us up on that 1 million revenue per person. So I actually had an insider reach out to me and saying that like this was a very stressful thing on those insiders to sit down thinking, can you imagine 1 million revenue per person? And a couple of these insiders said, like, what do you do when you've just got a small business? and it's just small staffed. How are you supposed to bring in $1 million per person? And going back to this, I just want to read out what it says here. And again, I just want to reiterate and read. You'll also hear this. I'll put the audio in here. He says, anyway, I walked out of the office and we regrouped. In the next 8 weeks, we cut 58 staff to get back to that ratio.
And it was that old point on the 10-point plan, cut to the concrete. So we had to aggressively cut the overheads, and it's ultimately what saved the business. So don't be emotional when you need to cut to the concrete. We don't want to obviously leave employees on the street without a job, but we've got a brilliant mechanism through HR 100 and like-minded business owners that can work together so that if community staff do need to be redeployed into another business that's experiencing growth and prosperity, then UBT will work collectively and collaboratively to make sure there's the best outcome for every business.
Yeah, no, I think it's really about our mindset. Do you think whether we need to have our mindset or the ability to have a mindset of cut to the concrete, or a mindset of executing on growth and executing against a plan? Just thinking back to 2017, when I walked into Father's office, and he always brought us up on that 1 million revenue per person. And at that stage, the overheads in the US had risen quite dramatically. We had a number of years where we bled and lost a lot of money, and we finally made some money. He asked me what the revenue was going to be that year, and I said, I think we might just hit 100 million. And he said, how many staff have you got? And I said, 160. And he said, what happened to the ratio that you agreed? And I said, I think I actually said something like, come on, Dad, that's like we were actually making some money for the first time. And he said, just if I was you, I'd probably get back to that ratio. Anyway, we walked out of the office and we regrouped. In the next 8 weeks, we cut 58 staff to get back to that ratio. I guess what it says to me, it says two things. One is to have the ability to turn the mindset on to cost control and cutting to the concrete. And then the ability when things are going good to then focus on executing against budget and growth targets.
In this Strive 26, their biggest thing that they try and push on here, other than the very culty drive of do, is this level of care and compassion. It's always care and compassion. We care. How is that caring? They literally are $1 million of revenue per person is what is being held on their hand here, over top of the care and compassion of 58 members or 58 staff. Like, this is, you can't sit back here and complain about all of the bad press you're getting when you pull out stunts like this. Like, come on, Charles and Dean. The press you're getting is a result of your actions. Care and compassion does not equal exactly what you did here.
And it's incredibly tone deaf as well. I mean, they're speaking to like the regular grassroots, ordinary employees and run-of-the-mill brethren. And they put in this blah about how willing they are to help small businesses. And then there's Dean saying, oh, I got emotional because my $20 million business went down to $10 million. Well, I mean, we all weep for you, Dean. Our heart bleeds for you. What a shock. My business is only worth $10 million. I mean, you know, he's going to be lining up at the food bank. I mean, how tone deaf can you get? And then, of course, Charles has to outdo him by waffling about his $100 million business. I mean, what do you think ordinary grassroots brethren who are actually struggling to make a living, to pay their mortgages, how do they feel when you two waffle on gaily about these businesses and then come out with your begging bowl in your hands wanting a whole lot more money?
This right here is pure greed. This is what greed sounds like.
There is one standout to me in this that's really they should never need to make anybody redundant based on what Bruce Hales has said. Never. Because each person needs to bring in $1 million. They're turning over, they've got sales revenue globally of $53 billion. They're 56,000 members. They're there. So why would you make anybody redundant?
Yeah. Absolutely.
That's a good point.
This is a very good point.
And another point about the employee management, basically, just like if you're a business owner in there, look at the control that you're giving now to UBT is basically telling you that they'll shift your employees around depending on, how much money you're making, or if they think you're not making enough and they go, oh, you got to cut costs. Look, we'll just move your employee over to this other business. Like, not only is that awful and, mean, and they're firing the non-members, but still, that's control over your company. They're controlling your employees now too.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, it's almost like a cattle farm. Oh, we'll just move these 50 head of cattle into a different field. I mean, there's no question of asking the employees or giving the employees an option of what business they would like to go in. Oh,
It's not
we'll
even
just
going on their
move
skill level.
50 Brethren members into this business and 25 to that one. And of course, they know that they will just do what they're told because they don't have any option. But it goes on to say in this, later on in this presentation, it goes on to say, quoting Bruce Hales, we're not controlling people's lives. We're not telling people what to do. And at the same time, they're speaking like almost unconsciously knowing that they can simply move brethren around, like pawns on a chessboard. They can just move them. There's no consideration of the actual people concerned as to what their needs and requirements might be. And this is total control. This is a cult.
Yeah, Charles Hales goes on to say,
it's fair to say sometimes you sit up here and you could view us as being obsessed with business, but the fact is there's much more important things than business and money making. But however, the one number is such a big number. The community is so big now. We're seeking to put such good conditions out there for the children and learning that we have to raise this money. So whilst we're not obsessed with business, we do need the giving, don't we?
That's good, Charles. So as we said, let's get involved and get behind UBT, and they are releasing an end-of-year seminar to empower and inspire in business and in life, and this includes the first ever sister seminar, so we're certainly looking forward to that.
So again, here it is. They're weaving in the children again. I had to take breaks from reading this. I left it to last minute to go through this because I knew I'd be triggered. I knew it would get me just riled up and tears rolling down my face again. And this was what it was. You again are using children. You keep weaving in this children, giving for the children. We're providing for the children to get what you need.
Yeah.
Why do you think what happened to me happened to me? Because you do not view children as sacred. And if you viewed children as sacred, you wouldn't exploit them. You wouldn't use them for your gain.
And they control the indoctrination of the children. And we'll go over this later, right from birth, an incredibly intense program of religious indoctrination, but also of a kind of business educational indoctrination, so that the product of One School Global is not young men and women ready for life. It's young men and women that have been exclusively prepared to fit into the Brethren's money-making machine. Like so many machine parts coming off the production line. They're not taught anything extraneous to what's needed to promote and build the Hales' vast money-making machine.
So the strive, it goes on. They've got here again, Richard mentioned this earlier about UBT's customers given their experiences with UBT, and it was a blah, 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 I guess probably very much handpicked like they do for all their PR.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically on that, what they're looking at doing, they give examples of people using the systems that they're promoting. So they heavily promote board assist from UBT. So what do we get? We get a couple of examples of businesses talking about where they've used board assist and got the correct advisors on board to deliver for them as a business. So it's as part of the selling process of UBT. These are the examples of where it's worked and how we saw our sales increase by over 50%. It's exactly what you would expect from salesmen selling something.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is a little hard to explain, in which case why Brethren revenues have flatlined if UBT is such a fantastic advisory body.
Mm-hmm.
They really shoot themselves in the foot every time they try and pull themselves back up. I mean, the thing is if they would just simply tell the truth, it would be such a different presentation. And they probably would get to where they want to go, but because they sit there and they dress it up and they shoot themselves in the foot so many times and they contradict things that they've put out to the media before. So they go on to, it goes on to the next two panels will provide updates from One School Global and Vision Welfare. And this panel consisted of Dean Hales, Charles Hales, Stephen Fuchs, Mark, somebody we didn't catch his last name, Kellum Jensen, and Logan Curry. So they go on to discuss OSG and the Vision Welfare.
Now this is really interesting because this is kind of repeating their extremely lucrative money laundering scheme, which we went over in some earlier podcasts. There's the One School Global Unispace money laundering scandal is definitely a podcast that every Brethren member needs to just review in the light of this announcement. And this is what they're saying. This is Logan Curry talking about One School Global. There's been significant progress and a strong focus on upgrading our campuses globally to give our students the best facilities and education as possible. The new Sydney campus is opening 2026, fully funded by the local catchment, and based on this design, we're working towards a cost-effective, consistent look and feel across all our campuses. Moving forward, the aim is for every location to reflect the same standards, identity, and experience. Now, if we go back 10 years or so to Steve Simmons' experience in the Auckland campus, we see exactly how this works. And again, we'll maybe insert one or two clips from those earlier podcasts. But fundamentally, the problem that the Hales family, should we say, the PBCC leadership has is this. They've accumulated enormous sums of money in a range of charitable trusts and charities all around the globe, billions of dollars, multiple billions of dollars. But because it's charitably donated, they don't really have access to it. They can't use it for their own personal ends. So it's kind of trapped behind this charity firewall where it can only be spent for charitable purposes. Now, one way they get around that is that they use those funds to give extremely large, low-interest loans, which they use to boost Hales family and Hales-affiliated businesses around the globe. But they have another scheme which they've been running very successfully, I might say, for years, which is called trade-based money laundering, or TBML. And it's a very simple concept, and that is they use that charitable money, or because they control the charities that contain those funds, they can coerce those charities into spending the money with businesses that they own. And the classic example of this was the Auckland campus in around 2010, 2012, was coerced into using Unispace, which was owned by Gareth Hales and a few other prominent friends of his, into rebuilding their Auckland One School Global campus at absolutely exorbitant profit margins of about 300%. And we'll play a little clip here of Steve Simmons going over exactly what that entailed.
A few weeks after the project had been restarted, an invoice arrived at the school from Chubb. They looked after the school's fire alarms and sprinklers and so on, and they used to do regular inspection because it's a school. They would come, I think, every 3 months or so and just check all the sprinklers and the fire alarm call points and all that sort of thing. And their bill was usually, from memory, it was somewhere around $200 or $300 per time. And then a bill came in from the same company for close to $3,000.
Oh, wow.
And the office lady forwarded it to me to check. If it was an ordinary invoice, she'd just approve it and process it for payment. But she forwarded it to me to check, and I thought, what's going on here? And I looked into it a bit further, and I realised that it was addressed to Charles Simmons, who's Neville's son, who also worked at Unispace. And so I thought, okay, this is a Unispace bill, not a Hillsborough Education Trust bill. And okay, so it's for the fire plan or something or other. And then I remembered seeing in the invoice that Neville had sent me, there was it was itemised a bit, and there was a line item for the fire plan for the new learning centre. So I thought, I'll look that up and see what they charged us for it. So in the invoice from Unispace, the fire plan was just under $9,000. 3 times the cost price. And I thought, what the hell is going on here? Neville had assured the trust that the pricing was going to sort of, be a good deal and whatever. And I mean, I was, as a trustee, I worked diligently as I possibly could to sort of keep bills as low as they could be. And, if I did any work for the trust, I either didn't charge them at all. Like if I provided items, I either gave it to them for free or I charged it on at cost.
Mm-hmm.
I just wasn't expecting these sort of margins. I was wild. So then I thought, I wonder how how all these other items stack up on the Unispace invoice. Things like carpet and because there was an Auckland brother that supplied carpet of the kind that Unispace were putting down in the learning centre. Not sure if they used him or not, but anyway, so I asked. He actually happened to be a trustee as well. So I asked him how much carpet for this many square metres would cost, and from memory, it was something like 15 or 16,000. That's what he would have charged the school. And Unispace charged something like 51,000 for the carpet, same carpet. And it was the same with all the items, like the chairs. My brother-in-law, also in Auckland, he supplies office chairs. And I don't know if they're using his chairs or not, but the chairs, total bill for the chairs came to something like over 100,000. And, there was something like, I don't know, there may have been 100 or 120 senior students, and there was over $100,000 worth of chairs in this learning centre, apparently.
And so, I mean, realistically, nearly all the Brethren schools were completely refurbished. The Oatlands campus, which is the Sydney campus, and the Auckland campus, and I think one other, the Darks Forest campus, were the pioneers of that 2010 refurbishment by Unispace of all the Brethren campuses. And a 10-year-old school, and because most of those refurbs are less than 10 years old, is going to be, pretty much new. Yes, it might need a lick of paint. It certainly doesn't need a complete demolition and rebuilding or massive capital investment. I mean, a good new office building could expect to last maybe 30 years before a major revamp, a major redecoration. But suddenly they feel the need to go through every campus globally and do a massive and extremely expensive, just changing everything up for the sake of it. Right? The old stuff's not worn out, but they're going to rip everything out and put in some extremely expensive new carpets, new flooring, new furniture, fancy ceiling panels, new computer systems, windows, whole new buildings and learning centres. And I can guarantee you that the work will be done by businesses which are either secretively or openly owned by the leading members of the Plymouth Brethren fraternity. And it's simply a way of laundering those billions of dollars that are charitably donated directly into the pockets of members of the Hales family and their close circle of friends and acquaintances.
So, Richard, let me break that down in my mind. So the charity, let's say One School Global collects the charity money that's donated from all the Brethren businesses or individuals.
Yeah.
They then go, okay, Edmonton, Alberta, the school, the Plymouth, the One School there, we're going to donate the money to their charity. They are going to refurbish the school with a whole bunch of stuff. We're going to get new chairs, but they're like $1,000 each chairs. And they have to be bought by the local Plymouth Brethren owned companies. Is that what you're saying?
Well, no, the way it works is, I mean, One School Global, I don't know if the finance even runs through the local.
No, but it goes from charity to charity.
It's paid out of their central fund. But the people they buy the chairs and the carpets from are all, just by pure coincidence, businesses in which the Haleses have a major interest, and the markups on those items are extraordinary. I mean, in the Auckland case, they simply took the cost price of everything they supplied to the school and multiplied it by 3 because they like nice simple numbers. And so you've got all the invoices. So to a tax accountant, if you don't think about how much things are really worth, you've got invoices that account for all the money that's moving between a charity and a private enterprise. But if you look at the profit margins, you will find that they've got these astronomical margins, and it's simply laundering millions and millions of dollars from the charitable sector into the pockets of the Hales family.
In the UK, the Grace Trust, which is sort of the forerunner to the National Assistance Fund, the Grace Trust used to own UBT in the UK, but UBT's money funded, basically any profits from UBT went to the Grace Trust. Grace Trust donated or gave grants to all the different education trusts. So basically, the money's coming to UBT, it's gone to the Grace Trust, they've given it to the local education trusts, and then a select amount of businesses, as Richard says, have then got that business. It is simply a way to funnel, as Richard says, charitable money into the hands of a select few people with very little governance or regulation behind it. It would look legitimate at all points.
I mean, even if they're required by regulation to get 3 quotes for a contract, they can still send all those 3 quotes to Brethren businesses.
What I find is that if obviously the research I've done into Brethren members' companies, it is something like 1 in every 18 companies does commercial interior design, whether that be for new businesses, other companies that aren't Brethren, health practices, dentists, schools. So there is a massive amount of companies that they could go to get that price. And the other bit I would add to that is I find it really strange, actually, because I came across a company, I'm going to say, I won't name the company, but it was in Scotland, and they did a massive commercial interior design project of their own premises, and surprisingly didn't use a Brethren company, which suggested to me that they were a little bit more clever with how they spent their own money. Yes. Rather than how a charity would spend its money.
They're more careful with how they spend their own money than how they spend other people's money.
Yes.
Yeah. This goes on to say, what we do for one, we do for all. As you are all aware, there is a new uniform being rolled out, and this is also part of the strategy. I bet it is. To lift overall feats in how our students learn, play, and interact. It is well known that we are recognized more than we realize. So true. And One School, along with our students, are noticeable. Yep, they are. Especially in regional areas. So our student appearance and conduct must build credibility with the wider community. So they are realizing that they're being seen. I mean, it's not in a positive way at all when you talk to any of the teachers that have been disappeared, and there's hundreds. But what a way that they are talking about student appearance, right? Like, why would you spend all this money? Again, this is how they think though, right? They spend all this money to look glam and perfect, and they've got these massive houses. Everything really is about appearance. It's all about money. It's all about greed. It's all about power.
But what an incredibly easy way to make a few $1 million, because of course we know there's a massive trade in used uniform. Like all the brethren have the same uniform, and when they grow out of it, they sell it on their kind of their internal eBay type sales thing, and uniform gets passed down from one child to the next. But suddenly that whole trade, which of course is taking money away from UBT, from the Brethren leadership, is completely disrupted. They roll out a whole new uniform and everyone has to get a new uniform. And I can remember from my days having children in Brethren school, the uniform is astronomically overpriced. It's extremely expensive. So let's say it comes to about $500 for a set of uniform. If all the like 9,000, 8,000 students globally need a new set of uniform, that's a cool $4 million right there. So, I mean, and again, you know, they've done this with ministry sets. They roll out a new series of ministry, you know, a new edition of the Bible. Everyone has to get the new latest thing. And it's just a massive cash cow for zero effort. They've got this captive market. They have to buy the school uniform. And guess what? You can't go and get it from your local department store. It all comes from UBT.
Yeah, I want to point out some very culty terms in these few paragraphs here. One school set on by the founders has been and continues to be a true preservation of our young people, and it's something that we're deeply thankful for. And then it goes on to say, in view of protecting the young people and all of us, it's important that we use devices with streamlined 3 protection, and we're encouraging parents and grandparents to be vigilant and watchful. I want to just point out where they bring up addiction in here. We've seen firsthand the devastating impact of gaming addiction, including things like social withdrawal, relationship breakdowns, and exposure to bad influences and even suicidal thoughts. Every parent needs to be aware of the dangers and stay vigilant. There are help and resources available, and parents are encouraged to reach out if they're concerned. There's an email address, and he gives out an email address. But I want to let's point out these culty terms about the preservation of the young children. What are you preserving them from? What they are experiencing in there is far worse than what they would experience out here. And when we get on the line of addiction, let's talk about the alcohol addiction that is in there. Because what is happening is all these addictions are being formed out of the pressures and the inability for anybody to have time to think, and the inability to be able to have any time to themselves as a family. What do humans naturally go to things that feed their nervous system to give them comfort because of a situation that they're involved in. This situation is the PBCC, and you're working them to the bones. So naturally, addiction is going to come about. And in this case, we're talking about a gaming addiction, but let's also talk about alcohol addiction. Why is that never brought up in these seminars? Why aren't we staying vigilant about that? Why do we have breathalyzers in our vehicles? The real addiction you guys need to talk about is your addiction to power, addiction to money, addiction to greed, because that is the container that all of this sits in, which breeds gaming addiction, alcohol addiction, sexual abuse addiction, domestic violence addiction. All these addictions are in a container you are building.
I'm not at all surprised that they've got a gaming addiction with young people in the Brethren, because it's a form of escapism, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
there's just this
I'd
relentless pressure, and there's all these restrictions, so you can't do all the things that you'd naturally like to do. You can't join a sports team, you can't join a musical, you know, you can't join a band, unless of course it's all Brethren. All the plethora of things that normal people do that you can't do, and this relentless pressure to excel in a very, very narrow range of, grippingly interesting studies like accounting and business studies and accounting and marketing and business studies. I mean, wow, I would disappear into games. It's just a little escape from that relentless pressure.
But I agree totally, but also, is someone truly addicted to gaming in there, or did some old guy hear about some kid, playing Tetris on his phone for a little too long? Like, I doubt they're having PlayStations and Xboxes and kids sitting for hours and hours. And by the way, I love gaming, so I know a little bit about that. And anything under 8 hours, even a day, it isn't damaging after about 25 years old. So 17 hours is considered addicting, or anything above 16, I think, straight in a row. So an hour a day, if there are kids addicted in there, or they're being told that they're addicted to gaming, an hour a day, depending on the game and what their parents allow them to play, is not unhealthy.
Okay, I just want to go into more cult terms, and so that they just can see that their language is really culty, because they go on later to dispute that they're a cult. So I just want to point out some of the things. Charles talks about, that's good. So our goal is for each student to graduate with a training and character to contribute meaningful to the workplace and our way of life. Logan goes on to say, we want them to be capable, confident, and grounded in the principles that define us. I want to go back to our way of life, principles that define us. And they're in here talking about the possibilities for their students to graduate with, which, number one, none of these students can go through a career option book and be like, I want to become a vet. I want to become a lawyer. I want to go into the army. I want to become a police officer. They have a set rule of what you can and cannot go into. So when you talk about these and our way of life, principles that define us, those are terms that you're going to find in a cult. This does not give them freedom. But if you're not in a cult, you have freedom to choose. You're not stuck to someone's way of life, principles that define you. That is cult terms. Those are cult sentences and a conversation that completely says, I am in a cult. I don't have the freedom to choose. And you're not giving your student the opportunity to graduate with training and character that contributes meaningful to the outside world. It's just to your world, which then limits them.
I mean, just to make it clear to people who are not familiar with the PBCC, you can't move from one town to another town. You have to stay in your own congregation, unless under very special circumstances with permission from Bruce Hales and an application process that takes a couple of years. So to start with, your career choices as a young person in there are limited to the physical distance you can commute from your own town. You couldn't move, say, from Cambridge to let's say Edinburgh, because there was a job opportunity in Edinburgh. You couldn't move from Sydney to Perth because there was a job opportunity in Perth. You're limited to the locality, the town in which you're born, in which your brethren congregation is. And then you can't work for any business in that town. You have to work for a brethren-owned businesses. So suddenly your career possibilities, the career opportunities that are open to any normal child, young person in the real world, are narrowed down to a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction of what would normally be available. Because within your congregation, there might be 2, 3 possible job openings in brethren businesses at the point you leave school in your immediate area. And that's it. And then they have this, what they call HR 100. And basically they, at the end of term, when you've got the school leavers, they hold a kind of a cattle market auction. The business owners get together, they all meet together in a room, and they divvy up the incoming crop of school leavers between them and decide who's going to have which. And of course, the really talented kids, the really bright ones, they will fight over, no, I want this one, I want this one. And then they get down to the ones that they call the charity cases, and then it's fighting the other way, and they're saying, oh no, you've already got so and so, he's a complete loser, so maybe I'll take on this charity case and see if we can make things work with him. So again, it's complete control. The children emerging from One School Global are simply a commodity to be exploited and used by the local Brethren business magnates.
Yeah, they go on to talk about, they bring up this whole hungry, humble, smart thing. And Charles goes on to say, we often talk about the hungry, humble, smart. And he goes over a conversation he had with his 3 children, blah, blah, blah. But it goes on, he says, but just that the comment that you made about more humility, just remembers what an amazing system that you've been brought up in. And to just stay grounded and stay humble, it makes you a much better employee. Reading this about humility and being humble, which the brethren are the farthest thing from. There are humble brethren in there, 100%. But when I'm talking about the brethren right now, I'm talking about who's presenting here.
The leadership.
There is nothing.
Yeah.
The leadership is not humble in any way, shape, or form.
There's an irony to say, but just that comment that you made about more humility. Just remember what an amazing system you've been brought up in. It completely hypocritical straight away
in the same sentence.
Yeah. It's very clear. The humility is for the employees. It's not for the business owners. Yeah.
And based on the amount of employees that have been let go, court cases from these drastic changes, this is the farthest thing from being humble. Right? Yeah. Like, here's the definition of humble. Having or showing a modest estimate of one's value or importance, not arrogant or self-important. Of low social, administrative, or political rank. Indignity or importance. So teaching kids to be hungry, humble, and smart is code for compliant, grateful, and exploitable.
Yeah.
And pushing humility on 5-year-olds isn't character building, it's indoctrination. One school is not preparing children for life. It's preparing them for the PBCC machine that you see here. So let's go. I put the bite model up against this, what this conversation that Charles was talking about. And here's what the bite model comes up with. So behavioral control, which is the B, is performance traits drilled into kids, information control, only PBCC approved skills and values. Thought control is gratitude, humility, loyalty over autonomy. Emotional control is guilt and fear of being proud, unspiritual, or disrespectful.
I mean, I think it's one of the greatest psychological damages, one of the biggest issues with the way that the brethren raise their children and in fact treat their members, is that the whole aim of the PBCC indoctrination system, which they admit in print multiple times, is to break the will and to break the spirit of their members. And people coming out of the PBCC, one of the biggest challenges they face in coping with the real world is that they have this terrible low self-esteem and sense of self-worth that keeps them from making progress. Yeah. I mean, I'm not talking about the big bugs, the business owners. I'm talking about the regular, the run-of-the-mill, the ordinary brethren. Their sense of self-worth and self-respect is utterly destroyed because that's exactly what the system of indoctrination, this cult system, is designed to do, is to remove your sense of autonomy and self-worth and turn you into someone who's completely dependent on the system.
When you look at Charles Hales, he talks about the cost of running One School Global. Earlier on, they talk about how UBT can really help and assist you with board assist and how they can help you budget and reduce your costs and get you back on track. But you look at One School Global and Charles Hales says, well, basically, we have to employ staff and that's it. There's nothing we can do with that figure or play around with it. So in reality, what you've got is we know what we're doing And there's nothing to back that up, because they won't change it for their own businesses, but they're quite happy for you as a Brethren member that owns a business to come in and pay lots of money to UBT to get this wonderful business advice. Yet at every other point, they talk about how brilliant they are. I mean, there is no humility at all in this, a total lack of self-awareness. And the fact that the Brethren schools are costing $370 million to run each year is an astonishing amount of money, but it is probably much within line of what private education costs. But you are talking there that is $40,000 per pupil per year. An awful lot of money that the Brethren members have to raise purely to educate their children.
But how much of that would they get through government grants, though? Like, that's their cost, and how much of that is covered by the government grants that come in?
It's a rumour to be around the $30 to $40 million that they get in Australia. The rest of it they need to fund.
Which we know that
to
they...
put that in context, Damian, I remember you making some remarks previously about some of the largest Brethren businesses could actually fund this almost single-handed. Is that correct?
If you look at, particularly from the businesses and the profits that were made during COVID, particularly by the Hales family and companies and people and Brethren members that were linked to the Hales family, you were talking that they could have run the One School Global from them profits for at least 5 or 6 years.
Wow. So and they really don't need contributions from the grassroots Brethren. The larger businesses in the Brethren ecosystem could easily fund the whole of One School Global. And it's those businesses that are actually benefiting from it, because that's what's providing them with their employees.
Exactly. And they do go on in here and they talk about, they actually quote a scripture about giving half the money away. So what we're saying here is, could not the Hales give half of their money away, fund OSG, and everybody would be happy? There'd be no financial hardship.
Well, I mean, when they launched the Vision Foundation, which they now call the Endowment Fund, they actually play a recording of Bruce Hales saying, "The half of my goods I give to the poor." Well, I mean, if the Hales family actually did that, there would be no need for any fundraising at all.
I mean, we're dealing with billions of dollars here. This is what when I listened to this, I guess part of me was so brokenhearted thinking of the poor grassroots Brethren that don't have the pocketbook like this administration is talking about. They don't have the pocketbook to be able to do everything that Charles and Dean are talking about here. And they're struggling. They're struggling emotionally, mentally, physically. They're exhausted. And yet they are having to go to the ends of their road to meet this high lifestyle that they're just expected to do. They don't have a choice to not have it. There's no choice in them escaping this lifestyle that they're in.
Add to that, if you are a young Brethren member just starting out with your own business, or an older member that's run a business for 30, 40 years, but you're a small business. The only reason you're small and struggling is because you're not paying UBT vast sums of money to increase the profits in your business. It's almost as if we've got probably a couple of hundred businesses worldwide that link to the Hales and the people very closest to the Hales that could fund everything very easily. Instead, we are going to the run-of-the-mill Brethren members, the small Brethren businesses, and actually saying, you're not doing your job properly. And what you need to do is give a pledge of an amount of money to support the one number. And also, you need to be paying for UBT so you can get our fantastic advice. It really is asking the bottom rungs of the, I say the bottom rungs of the ladder, that's not fair. Probably half the brethren that really just go out and live their life properly and have the right values and are good Christians, but aren't focused on business and money, to actually raise all the money for the top people. It's a bizarre system.
Damian, can you say something about the other areas where this one number is going to, particularly this vision welfare? I mean, where's all that money going to, vision welfare?
To me, when I look at vision welfare, it within the Strive document, it's quite funny because there's a couple of times where they say, obviously, you're looking here that 50-60 million dollars a year is going to vision welfare and some other charity bits, probably including Rapid Relief Team in there. It talks about supporting our widows and our elderly brethren within the community. But what's really odd is that it talks an awful lot about how this shouldn't really be coming from vision welfare. It should be coming from the local brethren. It's almost as if we're not really wanting to do this, but we're spending this money. And again, it's not a huge amount of money in the great scheme of things compared to One School Global. But the fact that they regularly talk, I can't find the actual reference to it, but they talk about how Bruce Hales says whenever a case comes across his desk, that he always says, have the local community been able to support this? Yes. So in reality, we don't want to fund it out of the global charity that you all give to every year. We want you to do it locally as well. So it's almost, we're going to double dip you. We're going to hit you twice for the same thing.
I mean, I kind of summed it up as the overall message you get here is, please give very generously to our amazing vision welfare system, but please do not expect it to bail you out if you have an actual need, because that's down to your relatives and down to the local brethren.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I want to read this out. It says, we just want to extend our heartfelt gratitude to our generous donors that have given to Vision Welfare over the years. Your donations are the lifeblood to our work, and it's run on the principle of the strong. Coming in aid of the week from 2026, our focus is on building sustainable finance support for widows and elderly. We want our elderly brethren and the widows to be able to live with dignity and continue to contribute meaningful in our community. And then we'll, of course, continue to support and respond to urgent and compassionate cases. Our goal is, however, majority of welfare needs to be met locally through family and local community members, where we can really prove care and compassion in action within our circle of care. That being said, there will be requests from time to time for financial support with cases in need. That's additional to your generous GFT donations. And I think the thing I want to say here is that from what we have received through emails and messages, is that it is a big issue for the elderly in there. And it actually goes on later on. They start talking about private giving and private donations, and to very much be prepared to have a budget and where does that money going to? So you can have this, but we also need to know what you're doing with it. But yes, this is done and this is meaningful. This is compassion and care. But yet we're going to monitor every little piece of it. Again, they're putting in all those words. This is how indoctrination happens. So I am on, my whole point in this podcast today is I'm pointing out where the culty stuff is so that you can hear it when you listen to this back. So when you're always putting in your code words, right? That is called brainwashing, Dean and Charles. That is brainwashing. When you take an idea to try and convince somebody, you're not only using the children, but you're using your code words. That is indoctrination. That is brainwashing.
I mean, we had Insider reach out to us where the Vision Welfare had come in and done something for some elderly relative. And then Vision Welfare comes round to them and says, oh, we helped out your great uncle or something. Here's the invoice for all the good we've done for them. So even if Vision Welfare does step in, they then send round debt collectors to the relatives and the local businesses to try and claw that money back. I just cannot see how they could possibly spend the money they claim they need on welfare when they're basically relying on the local brethren to fund it, independent of them. I think it's just another way to collect lots of money. I mean, they have billions stashed away in charities that the money they're not even using. They do not need to collect any money for vision welfare.
Okay, I want to move forward to something Dean Hales says.
That's excellent. I think we witness it, don't we, Charles, on, I'd say, almost a daily basis. The interest that Father takes in care and compassion cases on a universal level, and not only his generous financial contributions to each and every individual case, but just the time he takes to understand and provide the necessary support in any way, shape or form that he can. You got a comment on that?
Yeah, just also how keen he is, if that's the right word, or how diligent he is to make sure that the locality or the family is then made aware of that situation, because what we often find is there are situations that seem to be going on where the brethren locally are unaware of the situation, and Father's able to give generously and then to spur on others to give. I was just seeing that private giving. I looked up a reference with Cameron Hales last week. The Lord is looking for, as JSH in 1988, the Lord is looking for increase in private giving. There has been much private giving and God is pleased with that. So I guess the appeal would be, we understand that we're asking a lot and people are giving to all kinds of different one numbers, but we don't want to rule out this idea of private giving if we come across a case, if that's fair.
And I just wanted to make a comment here because I do, obviously, I'm talking to insiders on a daily basis. And there is a few cases where I have firsthand witnessed the actual opposite of this. Where Bruce Hales, he's more concerned about the appearance that's happening here versus the care and compassion of the children. So he does not take in every case and give it exactly what needs to be given. He's more worried about their appearance than the care and the compassion that's needed.
So just around the welfare, the vision welfare and the support for the elderly and the widows and people that need compassion in the Brethren membership. It was this comment that really kind of struck me because it was quite a bit after they talked about welfare and vision, and it's Charles Hales where he put.
Yeah, it's good, Dan. If anyone in this audience is a recipient of the private giving or of this money that's been given to you, I guess we'd just say be prepared for advice, be prepared for scrutiny, be prepared to submit a budget and to get help on your expenses and what you're spending. Obviously, as Father said earlier to you, Dan, every dollar is hard earned. So I guess it just goes both ways, if that's fair to put out there.
So basically, we're going to give you the support, but we're going to have all the control. We're going to monitor how you're spending it. We expect you to put a budget in place and be prepared for scrutiny. As cultish as you could possibly get.
That's like giving away charity with a tracking device in it. Like, what? You know what I mean? Like, what is going on there? Like, we're going to give you this money, but we expect you to take this advice. That's not altruism. That's not the spirit of giving. Yeah. That's like giving a Christmas present and then being like, yes, but I expect you to, tell me how you used the gift card and give me the receipt after. Like, come on.
Yeah, it's like a food bank that's got scales at the door to make sure that none of the people going there are actually putting on more weight than they should, right?
Care and compassion in action.
Pounds, no baked beans for you today.
Yeah, it's care and compassion in action. Here we have something I wanted to point out here. It says, do you think, Dean, there's a direct correlation really between this vision welfare and the idea of care and compassion within our local assemblies and within our families? Just thinking as you're speaking that it's not only through monetary means, not only by giving money can we help out in this vision welfare. Often it's just the ability to listen, to get down to someone's need, to hear them out, give them time. Often think when you sort of seen it expertly in these men, if that's the right way to say perfectly set out, but taking the time to hear someone's problem. Often think about when you come across it at a break or dinner time, and you might not have time then and there, but to set up a 15-minute Zoom or to have a coffee with them or to catch up at the workplace, just to hear the issues out and see if there's you can either point them in the right direction or help them. And what I want to point out in here is that in order for someone to open up the way that you're requesting them to open up here, People need to feel safe with you. The agenda that you keep pushing does not make people feel safe. I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again. Brainwashes is when you use these same words over and over. Again, they're using it again here. Care and compassion. But you cannot expect people to sit down with you and open up in a 15-minute window after everything that you do that is so out of line with what you say. You do not walk your talk. You do not practice what you preach. And the insiders are seeing that. This is where the issue lays. You're never going to get inside the heads and the hearts and the minds of these people as long as you are putting out what you're putting out that is in complete controversy of what you say inside meetings.
I mean, to give a really practical example of that, think of the case of Lindy Simmons, Lindy Jacobs, she is now. She had serious concerns, genuine concerns about certain things in the Brethren ministry and the Brethren doctrine. And so she wrote them down and wrote a letter to Bruce Hales setting out a series of questions, outlining her concerns, putting it all on paper. And what was the net result of that? She was shut up and then she was withdrawn from, and her parents were told to have nothing to do with her. So how do you expect people to come down and honestly express their concerns where the result of expressing those concerns may well be that you're withdrawn from, you're taken away from your family, from your business, from your work, and you're thrown out of the Brethren and you're treated as if you're dead? There is no way anyone in their right mind who has a real and genuine concern about something that the Brethren are doing is going to come along to Dean Hales and set it all out on paper and say, this is my concern.
Right? This is a problem in there. And I have so many insiders. I get screenshots, I get audio of their responses from priestly visits or priests that they reach out to. This circle that you're talking about of having people feeling safe to come and talk to you doesn't happen. You're not creating the safe spaces.
I think if you read what Charles says there and then Dean's response, that this isn't about care and compassion. And Charles talks around sometimes it might not be a monetary need for support. But actually, if you look at Dean's reply, he basically goes on, yes, we need to follow up on 14, 28, 90, 180 days, whatever is required to see through the plan to prosperity. There's no care or compassion. This isn't religion. This is all financial. Why would you put will follow through to see the plan to prosperity? Absolutely lack of self-awareness of that. What they are basically saying is, this is all about the money. We're not interested in anything else.
And they say themselves at the beginning of the Strive 26, they say the whole theme of Strive 26 is accelerating prosperity.
Yeah.
Not sitting down and making sure that every one of their 56,000 members is content and happy and not being sexually abused. Yeah.
And it used to be, back in my day in there, it was, just get ready for the rapture any day now. And now it's get ready for the one number because it's going to be big and it's going to hurt your pocket.
And they've got a 1.2 billion nest egg for the future, but the rapture's coming in 2029, so they better get on and spend it quick.
The rapture's not coming up in 2029 because if you go back to the beginning, UBT's plan is to double their profits by 2030. So obviously they're planning for 2030 in UBT, but the rapture's 2029.
Well, I can quite believe that the people who run the UBT won't be going up at the rapture, so they have to plan a little further ahead.
So the next part of the panel goes on to sharing experiences from schooling, the RRT and Orbit. And it says here, we'll hear from Anthony Arkell, Laura Craddock, Patrick Sanderson, Dylan Steedman, Nina Wilson, and Lars Anderson. Stay tuned for part 2 and episode 154, where we dive in to discuss this.
It's important for everyone to be easily able and succinctly articulate who PBCC is. Very incorrectly at times we've been labelled a cult, which we need to counter. PBCC is a system of care, compassion and teaching to help us move forward in every area of our lives. We're a Christian church, not a cult. We're not controlling business. We're not political influencers. I recall speaking to your father one time about a situation. He responded, "We're not running people's lives. We're not ruling people's faith."
Yeah, it's excellent. I was chatting to a brother the other day. He said he had to Google what a cult was because he didn't know. But I just thought it was important and pertinent that all the brethren out there know that we're nothing like a cult. And if we're going to get charged with that, you need to have absolute confidence to rebut it.
3 key traits of a cult is 1, they recruit, and we know very clearly that the PBCC don't recruit. Number 2, absolute control. I think that's very clear. We have guidelines, we have direction, we have ministry, we have the Holy Bible and the scriptures that we seek to lead and abide our lives by, but there's not ultimate control. And number 3, brainwashing. There's no brainwashing. And I think it was interesting in our church service, 1,300 members gathering together at 7 p.m. on a Wednesday night. There was no roll call. There was no formal checking in of who had attended and who hadn't attended. So it was really people there coming and attending for the love of the family and hearing the word of God. And I think another key point was that at that same occasion in over 300 locations worldwide, there'd be a coming together of like-minded individuals to hear a Bible reading, of which there was no central control or oversight as to who would be taking those individual Bible sermons. So I think we'd like to encourage all that are listening that may have some concerns from the negative media that you are part of a cult. The PBCC is not a cult.
How can you support Get a Life podcast? You can donate internationally via PayPal at www.paypal.me/getalifepodcast. Or you can scan the QR code on your screen that takes you to our GoFundMe. Every donation helps keep this project alive. If you are in a high-demand religious group and need help, please go to oliveleaf.network. To share your story or be a guest on the show, email info.getalife@proton.me. You can find all our Get a Life merchandise on our website at www.getalife.net. Please remember to like this video, subscribe to Get a Life, and comment.